Writing sequence for Tatum reading. Okay. Now, many kids who are at start 1 or start 2 really can't write well. They may actually physically be able to write, but they can't formulate sentences because they number one couldn't spell or write. So they had big problems in that area of trying to write. So what we do is we have a basic sequence we start with kids just to get them going. And we always let them refer back to the book for their writing. That's key for spelling, because that's what you've got to do anyway as an adult. If you're not sure of a word, you go back and look that word up. So we will start with the child who is just beginning and writing, and we will go ahead and we have the writing sequence. Let me pull it up. Okay. All right. So, number 1, can you see this document on writing? Good.
Yep, but it's different than the one that.
Steve, this is really, as you know, I reformatted that. Just if you pull it out of the chat, that would probably be better.
All right.
It's a little different than what you got going on there.
All right. Cool. Here's an outline for Scopes for Twitter, and tutors can follow the outline. Reluctant learners, try the secretary technique.
Can't see your document yet.
Okay, gotcha. Huh.
And can you pull your camera to see a little bit better, please? Thanks. And he's gone.
Technique. Oh, by the way, did you remember the name of that, Steve? Secretary technique? George.
Yeah, no, that was me.
It's a term I use a lot, and I just didn't use it here. It's good for you. You remembered that. Reluctant, try the secretary technique. Now, the secretary technique is something I have used in school for everything. So when a child's having trouble writing, I just come by and say, hey, go ahead and give me the first couple sentences. I'll be your secretary. With algebra, I'd say, okay, go ahead, talk me through the first couple steps of this problem. I'll be your secretary. And then I'll leave and say, I'll come back and check you. In other words, I found that this relieves a lot of anxiety for problem students, that you are basically taking away the motor complex so they can problems so that they can actually think through it. Well, for spelling, I will often, with a child at the very beginning, start writing the first couple of sentences. So if they're reading the bad ram, I would just simply say, okay, let's do a who or what. Who are we dealing with? And the child will say it, and I'll write it. Bad ram. And what happened? Oh, bad ram ran at a car. Good. Okay, so we got a who or what did what. And then we might say, okay, the bad ram hit the car. Good. And then I can start adding phrases. Once I've got the basic idea of the who or what, I'll add a when phrase. So the bad ram hit the car at night during a storm. Okay. So we'll add a where and a when phrase. Now, we can actually add phrases that we can, like the bad ram is pretty primitive. So we can actually add, let's just go ahead and add our own where phrase. Let's add our own when phrase. But we initially start with the who did what. That's where we start with, then a where phrase and a when phrase. Now, child will dictate it, but I'll help them. Say, who or what are we dealing with? Now, they'll go look. And what happened? Good. Does it tell us where? No. When? Okay. Great. Then I'm going to introduce COPS. I'm going to say, here's a technique we're going to use to evaluate sentences. Now, at this sentence, did we begin with capital? Do you know what a capital is? And so I'll show them. I don't capitalize it first, so I go capitalize it. And then we'll look at organization. Do we have a who or what did something? That's the basic. Who or what did something. Once we teach a where, when phrase, who or what did something, where or when. That's our organization. So our organization is how we're organizing our writing. Once you're writing in a paragraph, your organization will be different. You're looking for main idea and supports. So we'll check for organization. Then we check for punctuation. Did we end in a period? That's usually where we start as a period. Then later on a comma. Exclamation point if you're yelling. So we'll just check the punctuation. And last, spelling. Now, I used to misspell words and have the kid correct it, but spelling, there's been research in spelling that if a child initially sees a word spelled incorrectly, they remember that spelling. So I no longer do that. What I might do when I write it is put C, like let's say it's cat, a line in T. See, and say, you know, I'm not sure how to spell this word. Can you help me out? Oh, at, sounded out, at. So if I want to do a spelling correction, I will just write part of the word and draw a line saying, I'm not quite sure how to, can you help me spell this word? Okay, the word is that. I can only remember the part. Can you help me? Oh, at, good. And then there we go. So I'm actually, through the secretary, I'm introducing them what a basic sentence is, okay? Now, at the most basic level, for a student who's really having trouble coming up with any ideas, or if it's a seat work, I'll have them take a picture from a book and just write the who or what from the picture, look at the paper, and then they can add a where or when from the picture as well. In other words, they describe the picture. There is a cat and the cat is at a van. Good. The van hit a rock. Good. They just describe the picture as best they can. I found with older kids who say they can't write, if they don't do that, it's less that they can't, more that they won't. Because a description, you have the picture right there that you can describe. So let's go back though to a child who basically can follow the sequence of who or what did what. So I've got the child to do who or what did what, and then we're starting to add a where phrase. And now I write a sentence and the student writes the second sentence. So we read a little bit about the mad cat. And I would write, okay, the mad cat ran at the man in the van. Cool. And then I'd say, your turn. And they would then start actually writing or typing the second sentence. So I'm breaking them in to them doing some writing. And so then I can enlarge this by me and the student switching back and forth. And then again, we will check with cops. I'll say, okay, now let's go back. We've done a couple. Let's check. Do we have a capital? Good. Do we have our organization, who or what did what? Yeah. And we added something, what, where and when. See, where and when is an extension to the basic kernel, who or what. We added the where and when, great. Do we have punctuation? Yes. And do we have spelling? Well, there's one word I didn't know. As you can see, I'm missing the vowel, and the word is best. What vowel goes there? But oh, eh, good. So we correct spelling. So I walk through COPS and we make corrections using COPS. Okay. That's kind of the beginning approach. And then my goal is that the next step is the student starts writing advanced beginners, or this is for where the beginning student actually becomes more advanced, is a student starts writing 2 good sentences themselves. Okay, so now let's say we're at ocean fun. The girl is with her cat at the ocean, great. She likes to hide in the shade because it's hot out, great. So we get them to do it, and then we do COPS. Okay, we're looking for a pretty good summary is what we're looking for. I mean, a basic summary. A basic summary really is a gist. The basic gist. The gist is somebody did something because, that's usually your basic summary. Okay, so I just read a story with a student about Milli Vanilli, who were the con people who had a fraud where they actually lip sang and got a Grammy for it. And so our main idea was Milli Vanilli actually imitated singing because they couldn't sing, but they looked good and they could dance well. Now that's the main idea of the story. And then later on, we get into the full gist where there were effects, problems, and solutions. You know, the effects were, they actually did quite well. They got these Grammys, they got all these awards, they had millions of followers. The problem was they got found out because people realized they were just lip singing. The solution was they had to fess up. So basically, when you are writing the summary, where you're really just necessarily writing a basic gist, somebody did something because, and then we add, again, as much as we can in the who, what, where. Now, if a child can do that, a child can write a little summary, like, give me a summary of the story. Well, the girl went to the beach with her dog. She went there because they like to go swimming. They ran into an eagle. The eagle splashed down, the dog ran after it. Now you're getting a sequence of who, what, who, where, and what's, and you're getting a good summary. That's kind of where we want to be with our start ones and twos, that they have sentences that have the kernel, somebody did what, something, and then actually start adding where and when into as they're writing. So if I can get them to write 3 to 4 good sentences that way with a summary, we're in good shape. Writing summaries actually helps improve comprehension. We know that as well. Now, the more advanced writer. So again, I'm interested in initially that the child gets the who or what did what, they get that down. And there might be a series of those. And then start adding where phrases and when phrases as they go. A really good sentence will have this whole thing. John went to the store at night. John went to a store at night. Well, that has the where and it has the when phrase. So a good sentence has both the who or what did what and it has a where and when phrase. Where and when phrases are easy for kids to add because they all like no in the night, in the morning, to the store. Now, a little more advanced is writing descriptive words. And rather than using the term adjectives, adverbs, and all that, I just say, let's first start with descriptive words for noun, such as beautiful, sunny, scary, angry. And so the child would say, well, the angry cat ran at the car. So we start getting them to come up with some descriptive words of nouns, which we know are called adjectives. I wouldn't even use that word. You could use it interchangeably, but I want them to know because I also am calling descriptive words for the verbs, usually words ending in ly, like she ran quickly, he spoke silently, he acted strongly, she ran quickly at the race the next morning. So you're now adding a descriptive word to the verb. This is getting more advanced. Okay. So we started with the child, the who or what, did what, and then they started adding phrases. Initially, they may do a couple kernel sentences. The girl went to the park, she went with her cat, and then better sentences that have all 4 components. And then once they start writing a couple good sentences, we then can talk about, let's add a descriptive word to the noun, usually goes in front. Let's add it, or let's add a descriptive word to the action word. And again, will use the terms, let's add in a descriptive word to the who or what. Let's add a ly word or a descriptive word to the action or verb. So I have to use kind of the basic and give examples. Okay. So we got a child that's actually writing a good kernel sentence and then adding where and when phrases. And then adding a descriptive word to either the noun or the verb. We got pretty good sentences being developed. And in a tutorial with a start 2 or beginning 3, that's probably about as far as you'll get, but that's great if they can start writing these kind of advanced sentences. Okay, then we just begin with a simple paragraph. This is a lead up to the essay. And so they'll learn to write a paragraph beginning with the main idea and supporting points. So we'll just ask, what's the main idea of the story? Let's lead with that. Okay, what are some of the things that happened? So the student will brainstorm words to help memory. So what I have them do is, once we're getting into multiple sentences, I'll have them jot down keywords in the order he's going to write. This helps their memory not forget it, because when I worked with writing with a student here recently, we'd brainstorm the words, we'd have them written, but not in order, and he'd forget. So we started brainstorming the words in order that he's going to use, and then he would write his paragraph, his main idea, which is kind of the gist. Somebody did something because, and then we would go into, the words will be in the order of sentences. And they will begin with the main idea and then supportive sentences. So there was a major hurricane in New Orleans. The first thing is the hurricane hit the beach and destroyed several restaurants. Second thing, the water overran the dikes and that caused many problems. Third, you're basically just listing an order of things. You're not really trying to give an essay, you're just listing. Again, the brainstorm of words that are written down will help the child remember when they write this paragraph. Now you can go a step higher in writing and teach them to begin with a where or when phrase. So rather than going, we saw a huge well at the beach, we can go, at the beach, comma, we saw a huge well. This is now getting more advanced. We're making a little different variation of the sentence. During noon, we had our lunch. In the morning, we went to school. So that's now getting a little more creative. Something I do with my advanced students is I talk about how to combine two simple sentences. Like, we saw the parade, but we missed many of the floats. Okay. Now, just so you know, there's a difference between a compound sentence and a compound predicate. A compound sentences are two sentences that can stand alone and are joined with these connective words. So we saw the parade can stand alone. We missed many of the floats can stand alone. And since we have but, we need a comma there. But if we didn't have we there, we saw the parade, but missed many of the floats. Missed many of the floats cannot stand alone, so no comma. Both of the sentences have to have a who or what did what. A who or what did what. Then we put a comma between it. It's called a compound sentence. And I show it this way. Here's a simple sentence. Okay. So I guess from your view, be this way. He ran to the store. So you got a sentence that can stand alone. Actually, I'm used to doing this. He ran to the store. So this stands alone. He ran to the store. When I add another sentence to it, he ran to the store and he bought some candy. It now, if two sentences that can stand alone, you need a connective word. But if you don't have two sentences, he went to the store and bought some milk. It can't stand alone. So you don't use the comma. It's when you got two sentences that can stand alone and they're joined with a comma. And, but, or, nor, or for. That's a lot. We're going to pause here and we'll continue next week with the rest of it. But let's just kind of summarize what we're talking about. With beginning writers, one thing you can do to get them writing is to give them just a picture of books that they are going to read and have them jot down a sentence as best they can about what they were using the words from the book. So they'd go back just to get them writing. But once I have them coming up with their own summary in their head, I do the secretary technique where they'll tell me the sentences, I will write them, and then we'll do cops. Initially, the kernel, who or what did what, and then we add the where and when phrases. Okay. Eventually, I will have the child take over. I'll do a sentence, they will, and then eventually they do multiple sentences. Okay. More advanced writers, by the way, you can have a start 3 that'll begin right here. So they might begin right with adding descriptive words, or they may begin right here. In other words, you have some writers who right off the bat can do a summary with who, what, where, and when. So you want to start with that. Usually a start 3 or a start 4 can often write 3 or 4 sentences. Start 4 could start even further down here. So I kind of like the basic phonics program. You're going to start where the child is. But when I have a start 1 or 2, I know where they are. They can't write. And I also know that they don't like writing. So the secretary technique takes all the pressure off of them. That's why I like it. And it's very reasonable when I say, now it's your turn to add a sentence. Okay. And then when I say, okay, you do a couple. Now, if they're doing a couple and they struggle, I immediately take over with the secretary technique. Okay. All right. So, and we have, again, the advanced students start further in the program. Now, more advanced, again, that's where we're adding descriptive words to the noun and descriptive words to the verb. Okay. We add words to the noun, we add words to the verbs. And then we go to a simple paragraph. Next week, we'll talk about dictation software and the essay and the creative writing. Let's pause here for questions.
I have a question as it relates to the beginning students there for number 1.
Sure.
So it says, looking at the sheet here, number 1, beginning students, and it says, reluctant writers try the secretary technique. So my question here is in number 1 there, it says, for beginning students, the teacher writes the first couple of sentences. I understand that.
Good.
And then it says, after the student writes the sentence, writes the third sentence or one of the sentences the teacher has done? I'm confused about that third sentence in number 1.
Yeah, that actually needs a correction. The sentences who did what, after the teacher writes the sentence should be the word. Let's correct
Okay. That was my clarification. Yeah. Is that correct? It's after the teacher writes the sentence? Okay.
Well, right now it is.
Okay.
They walk through the cops.
Sure.
Okay.
So that was my only thing was I going, okay, the teacher has written the first 2 sentences and then that next sentence was after the student writes the sentence, and I was going, well, what sentence is the student writing?
Right. So that would not come into he's writing, when the student starts writing the second sentence,
sure,
when we would do that.
Okay,
we make
perfect.
a slight modification on that. George,
thank you
for picking that up. Appreciate that. Other thoughts on this? Make sense?
I was gonna send an email of it. I personally think instead of saying descriptive words, I would say describing words, because I don't think that kids would know the word descriptive versus describing.
You could do that. See, I define it. So it's a vocabulary.
Right.
I say descriptive, just tell me more about it. That's what descriptive means. But yeah, you can change it to describing anything. Show me. You can go and call it show me words. Because I'm taking, rather than using adjectives, adverbs, it really should be add nouns and adverbs. That really should be the term. So I find those very confusing. That's why I say just add a descriptive or describing word to the noun or to the verb. And I just keep it simple.
Right.
So any way you can communicate that, the better.
Right. I also think that the COPS really would be more for the advanced beginner student, because a real true beginning student wouldn't be able to think about that at all.
About what now?
COPS.
Oh,
yeah.
Actually, I've done it with kindergarten. But they're such basic sentences. I deal with capitals. I'm primarily dealing with capitals, spelling and punctuation, the organization. But yeah, it actually isn't that hard as long as I model it a lot.
I
And
guess it
again,
depends on how much they're struggling with the actual writing.
yeah, it's exactly true. So if they can't actually write, then, but I would do it with my own. You see, that's why I do it with my own initially. Let's look for capitals. I didn't capitalize that. Our organization, you can see I couldn't spell this word. I didn't finish it. Can you help me? And what do we have to end with? But yeah, kindergarten kids can do that. It just takes much, much longer. Okay. All righty. So other questions before we move on? We're about done. If not, George, again, thanks for that correction. So next week we'll come back and we'll look at kind of the next steps we often do with a high 4 or start 5, which are listed here. Okay. All righty.